Tonight, we are looking at the Cowboys' updated roster, defensively speaking, and I'll share with you why I believe that the Cowboys are doing defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer wrong ahead of the 2024 NFL season. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Prime Time. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. With a lot more content coming your way, make sure that you check out atozsports.com/Dallas. And as always, do me a favor and hit the like button for me if you enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone. On a Monday night, it is a great night to talk some Cowboys football. It is officially April. The NFL draft is under a month away, and we're going to ramp up the draft content. But tonight, I thought it was a good opportunity to look at the Cowboys roster as it stands right now and focus on defense. We did this, I believe it was last week for the offense, and I was hoping to do defense, a few days later, but news kept coming up and maybe we had to delay it a little bit. But tonight, we'll look at each position on defense, and I'll share with you why I just believe they are doing Mike Zimmer wrong. And I know it sounds weird because they did get Eric Kendricks for him. That led to me naming Mike Zimmer as one of the few winners of the Cowboys free agency. But honestly, the more I look at it and the more I see all of the positions, the more I believe Zimmer ends up actually belonging to the losers category from free agency, because even though he got his guy, he got Kendricks, who knows his defense, who can help him teach the Cowboys what he wants them to do on that side of the ball. There's also so many underrated weaknesses on the Cowboys roster, defensively speaking, that are going unnoticed because of other more pressing stuff on offense, and that that will lead to the Cowboys potentially not really addressing them in a significant way ahead of the 2024 NFL season. Now, when I say that, this is more or less what I mean. I think the Cowboys offseason has had two different themes. The first theme was all about whether or not the Cowboys were going to move on from their current coaching staff. Now, the first phase within that phase was all about Mike McCarthy. Is he getting fired or not? Pretty quickly, we learned that he wasn't. Now, we moved on to the question, well, what's going to happen with Dan Quinn? Is he going to leave for a head coaching job elsewhere, or is he going to be fired, or is he going to stick around and coach the Cowboys defense for a fourth consecutive year? We got an answer to that, and then it became, well, who's coming in to replace him? And eventually we found out it was going to be Mike Zimmer. When all of that settled down, the offseason theme then became the free agency and how the Cowboys were handling all of it. And I think when you see Tyler Viadish leave and you see Tony Pollard leave, and the same with Tyron Smith, the big takeaway has kind of been, we are screwed on offense, right? Because we're seeing an offensive line that is taking a step back. We don't know who's going to play as running back one, and we might not find out until day 2 of the NFL draft, right? So all of that became the conversation. And when you look at the defensive roster and how it stands right now, you're kind of taking it back and you're like, oh, damn, we have so many issues that we haven't really discussed, and that's what I want to do tonight, and just get into all of those details, and especially the fact that with that big need for offensive line and with this attitude from the Cowboys in free agency, a lot of the weaknesses that we are going to talk about tonight, I'm not sure what the plan is to fix those, because I know what the plan is likely going to be to fix the offensive line issues, right? The Cowboys are likely using their top pick in the NFL draft on an alignment. They're probably going to use 24th on either a tackle or a guard or a center. depending on who's there available when they are on the clock. But then I look at all of the hype about Mr. Jonathan Brooks from the Texas Longhorns, and you're kind of thinking, wait. Is the Cowboys' best shot at picking a defensive player until the third round? And if that is the case, what are they hoping to get out of that? So we're going to talk about all of that tonight. But first, let me say hi in the chat very quickly. We've got a lot of people here in the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, thank you for your time to listen to Prime Time. We've got Jameson, we've got Anthony, we've got TZ915, we've got Daniel, Katharina, Gregory, Isidro. Shout out to all of you in the comments right now. Bill says, it's not only Mike Zimmer, the Jones family are doing all of us fans wrong. They are ridiculous. So there's definitely some strong feelings going around here on the show. Gregory says, Mo, did you see that the Dodgers are trading for Josh? Gregory, if you're going to come at me with an April Fool's joke, it better not be that, because that is definitely not going to happen. I'm going to say, man, I didn't fall for a lot of April Fool's stuff today in general. I don't know if you guys did, but the one that I, for a split second, did is Juan J. Thomas. I'll say that he got me. And you know, he kind of teased that there was going to be a uniform change for the Cowboys. Now, I didn't fall for the uniform that he picked because that was a very easy to spot thing that it was not real. But for a split second, like, I saw the player wearing the 24, the one that Juan J was using, and I just thought he was going to change jersey numbers. That was literally it. That's all that I fell for on April Fools. Didn't fall for anything else. I saw that the Buffalo Bills made it seem like they were going to let a fan make their first round pick, which was obviously kind of insane, that he was going to make the decision. And then there was a huge sweepstake, some sweepstakes to make that happen. Gregory says, Mo, Cat got me. Oh, yeah, I saw that before going live. Somebody in the chat. So Katharina said in the chat that the Cowboys were trading CD Lamb for 4 players, and Gregory fell for it. Gregory, come on, man. You should have seen that coming. But that was a good one from Katharina for sure. But anyways, with April Fool's talk out of the way, let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at every position for the Cowboys and let's discuss what things stand for at right now, defensively speaking. And we would have to start at edge rusher. Now, I don't care if you want to put Micah Parsons at linebacker, whatever you want to do, defensive end, blah, blah, blah. I'm using edge rusher and interior defensive lineman as terms for this show. And this is how I view how I break down the edge rusher room. Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence are obviously the presumed starters at the position because they are the starters at this position. A lot has been made about the Cowboys potentially asking Micah to play more linebacker and how Mike Zimmer could help making that possible. You know what my take has been on the show for a long time. That is not really up to Mike Zimmer. If you're Micah Parsons and you're negotiating a second deal and a defensive coordinator on a 1-year contract wants you to play off-ball linebacker, that is just not likely to happen. That is the reality of the game that we are talking about here. So that seems pretty obvious to me. Micah and Dila as the starters make you look at edge rusher for the Cowboys and make you go, hey, this is a strength of the team. But that changes a little bit when you get into the depth. And a lot of people would kill for Micah and Dila. A lot of NFL teams would love to have that duo starting for their defenses. But the depth, I got to tell you, it's not great. Armstrong is gone. Fowler is gone. And with them, over 700 defensive snaps. When those 4 were on the field, too, when Micah, Dila, Armstrong, and Fowler were on the field with those NASCAR fronts on 3rd and long, there was very few 4-man units in the entire NFL that even got close to their pass rush efficiency. Now you're replacing them with Williams, who should be a solid replacement. Williams is on the rise, at least talent wise. I know discipline is a topic we got to take into account here, but just overall as a player, Sam Williams is a solid number three, in my opinion. But after that, you got virtually no experience in Bilyami Fehoko, Tyrese Wett, who's kind of like a flex player between edge rusher and linebacker, but he got more edge snaps. So this is where he's listed at. And Doral Johnson was in a similar spot, very limited experience. I think this is one of the most underrated needs on the Cowboys going into 2024. Your depth at edge rusher is straight up concerning, because we can sit here and we can act like Fehoko is going to be ready to go, and maybe Fehoko was just a healthy scratch for the entire season because the Cowboys were so ridiculously deep at edge rusher. But I think that's the part we are ignoring. A lot of NFL teams would have daydreamed about the depth that Dallas had at this position. Armstrong signed a lucrative deal with the Washington Commanders, and he was expected to, because NFL teams around the league seem to agree that Armstrong was actually pretty damn good and he could be a starter elsewhere. And that is likely going to happen with the Commanders in 2024. That is something significant to lose. And the Cowboys are not doing a lot to build up that room again, depth-wise. Again, it's ambivalent because we're talking about a top-tier starting duo, but depth is not great. And a lot of the Cowboys' success pass rushing-wise in the last 3 years, obviously it was something that was spearheaded by Micah, but at the end of the day, it also was mostly about that depth as well. Now, shout out to Toxic Tom, who is bragging about the Baltimore Orioles, and I cannot stand it. But okay, I'll allow it. But Toxic says, I cannot stand Sam Williams. Can barely trust the dude to drive home. And discipline is definitely an issue. And this is where I look at this group of players and I'm like, that's the one bet that I have for depth. Like, I'm betting on Sam Williams to be my number three. All I'm saying is I'm not sold on the Cowboys edge rusher group because of the lack of depth. And I think we're kind of ignoring that because it's masked behind Micah and D-Law, who are a great starting duo again. So maybe that becomes a very small issue, but it's an immediate hit to your pass rush, which was absolutely one of your biggest strengths when Dan Quinn was around with the Cowboys. And when are they going to invest at edge rusher? Because it's likely not going to be in the first round of the NFL draft. And it's likely not going to be in the second round of the NFL draft. Although I wouldn't be surprised if they end up going off script. That is one of the positions that I would look at, edge rusher, for the Cowboys, because we know they do like them. So there's that. Now, moving forward a little bit here is the other part of the defensive line, the interior defensive line, defensive tackles. Also, Digisuwa, you're fine, man. 3 technique, who is dominant. I really like Oza. I think he's really just going to get better and better. The problem is, who is he surrounded with? Masi Smith is your presumed starter at nose tackle, and he is out for a few months after having offseason surgery. And that is after a disappointing offseason that, I'll tell you, man, for a good while, I thought it was the coaches asking Masi to lower his weight. The more and more I ask around and poke around, it seems like Quinn didn't really have anything to do with it. And Mike McCarthy sure made it sound like it was all on Masi losing that weight. When he talked to reporters at the owner meetings, I thought those were some very revealing comments when he was like, he needs to have a better plan. That's what Mike said to reporters. So did we misread that situation? My dog says yes. My dog says yes. I'm hoping somebody just got home so he can be let out of the studio before everything goes awry. All right, there you go. There he goes. So yeah, man, Masi, I think we kind of misread that situation there. And it was really on him all along. And if that is the case, that's the guy they're betting on over Jonathan Hankins, even though Jonathan Hankins barely got $2 million. There's that. Now, the depth is not great either. The other nose tackle that is healthy and the other nose tackle that is on the roster is Carl Davis, who's got limited experience, who doesn't have a lot of upside, and was supposed to be just a training camp body, likely. And then Chauncey Golston, who is a 3 technique. I know he's somewhat of a flex guy. He also plays a lot of defensive end, but mostly he played tackle in 2023. So that is where he goes. And I like Chauncey Golston, but I could also use with a better defensive tackle room than this one. And man, a huge part of it, a huge part of the Mike Zimmer new defense is trying to be more flexible and trying to be able to play more 2 high coverage, middle of the field open, cover 2, quarters coverage, and being able to change it up more often than Dan Quinn did. But if you are going to live in that 2 high group where the 2 safeties are not, well behind the line of scrimmage, playing deep zones or whatever, and not loading the box, then you better have somebody who can really take up space up front. A nose tackle who can really take 2 guys on the line of scrimmage, play gap and a half, play 2 gap defense, so you can survive with a 6-man box or a 7-man box. Because I've talked about this a lot. When the Dan Quinn defenses were able to stop the run, it was because they were selling out on it. And they had a great group of defensive backs to play man coverage behind it and not get killed for the most part. But if you really want to tap into what Mike Zimmer does best, you better be able to play some 2 high coverages, and that implies having a dominant nose tackle up front. And right now, I kind of struggle in believing that they do. Joe Gonzalez says, my dog is now searching the room for your dog, LOL. Now, this is literally my favorite comment ever on primetime. Dogs are awesome, man. Dogs forever. Shout out to Joe. That's a great comment. TC says, we are winning the Super Bowl this year. That's April Fool's. Bob says, Masi will be fine. Sim will turn him into a high-valued nose tackle and huge performance coming for Masi. Hope you're right, Bob, and I'm rooting for that for sure. I'm just a little bit concerned about the Cowboys not being able to take a look at that until training camp, you know? Mark Aaron says, Mo knows Rex. He plays with crayons and he goes to restaurants, says Mark Aaron. Which Rex are we talking about here? Oh, Rex Morgan. Rex Morgan. The joke is on We Fans, says Rex. Oh, there you go. Shout out to Rex. Thank you for joining the show. Moving on a little bit here. Now we'll get to the linebackers. Oh, and again, just circling back to the title of the video, why didn't you just sign Jonathan Hankins, man? Why didn't you just get that insurance policy and take care of that? Where, hey, the worst we can do is Jonathan Hankins. And you just have that ease of mind going into the offseason. Because what Bob said, that's fair. Like, they might really think that Masi is really going to take that step forward and that Masi is indeed going to be fine. They might think that, and they might end up being right. But for a $2 million contract, you could have made sure what your floor at the position was. And for some reason, you didn't want to do that. The Seattle Seahawks offered Hankins more money, and it wasn't even a very lucrative deal. It was almost exactly what we expected it to be, the deal for Hankins. I think we all thought it was going to be around the $2 million mark. But the Cowboys are like, nah, screw it. Doesn't matter if my nose tackle cannot practice in the spring. I'll just roll the dice and see what happens in the summer. And again, had you taken care of the Tyron Smith thing and the Tyler Viadic thing, or at least one of the two, and you would have one concern less, or the running back position going into the NFL draft, we could be sitting here talking about, well, they could really like Tavondre Sweat, or they could really like Mason Smith, or this guy, or that another guy. but it becomes harder and harder to just be like, hey, there's a draft pick out there that could really solve the position. But man, Cam says I loved Hankins. Not gonna lie, I did too. I think it was one of the most frustrating decisions the Cowboys have made this year to not re-sign him. Because at least with Tyron, as much as I disagree with the decision, at least I can see the sense behind it. I can see the logic behind it, where they were like, man, listen, we were not gonna commit a $12 million cap hit for Tyron. Even though I feel about the cap like I feel, even though I also have criticized that decision a lot on this show, there's at least an argument going against Tyron. Not with Hankins. Like there's nothing you can tell me that can convince me that the Cowboys were right to not sign Hankins to the deal that he signed for Seattle. So there is that. Then we move on to linebacker. And sure, I like the Eric Kendrick signing. It's not bad. I've explained my thoughts on Kendricks. It's a good decision. He is 32 years old, but you're not betting on the athleticism. You're not betting on the change of direction, the speed. You're not betting on any of that. You're betting on the instincts and the knowledge and the experience and the fact that this guy knows what Mike Zimmer wants to do. So I like signing Eric Kendricks. Other than that, I'm really not going to fool myself and be like, yep, they checked that box. Man, they didn't. It's Kendricks, it's Damon Clark. Those are the two presumed starters as of right now. And I'm sorry, but Clark has been decent. And that's more or less where I would stop describing his play. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, Damon Clark is killing it on the field, because I don't think he was in 2023. He wasn't the biggest liability out there, but I'm not sure Damon Clark really moves the needle on your defense at all. Had the Cowboys gone out there and got Eric Kendricks and then somebody like Jordan Brooks or Frankie Luvu, or just going a little bit more crazy here, Patrick Quinn, oh, that would have moved the needle for me. I'm not sure this does. Now, sure, I can sit here and be like, man, DeMarvion Overshown is going to be the guy. He's so going to be the guy. But what am I basing that on? A strong summer and a strong game in August of last year? God damn. This is what I mean when I talk about finding out about Amasi on the summer. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Like, some of these players, you just are not going to find out until you reach Oxnard. And I think that is not the best way to go about building a better team. Building a better team is about taking smart risks. And I'm not sure the Cowboys are taking even dumb risks in 2024, because they haven't taken a single one. Signing Eric Kendricks is not a risk, by the way. So, man, I like Overshown. I'm excited about Overshown. I'm able to fight my own biases and be like, okay, being real, I didn't see him for a full preseason. I have not seen him play a single down of regular season football, and he's coming off of an ACL injury. So at the very least, I got to look at things objectively and be like, it's an unknown. Who knows who DeMarvion Overshown is? And I sure would have liked the Cowboys to make another addition to linebacker just to feel a little bit better about it. To the point where if Overshown turns out being what we want him to be, I explained it like this before, he's going to be that $5 bill or $10 bill that you find in the back pocket of your pants after you washed them. But it's not my life savings or anything like that. Let's see what you guys have to say, though, in the chat. Charles says, damn, you see the negativity still going on. Now I'm out of here. When does it freaking end? All be safe. I'm out. Now, I'm not mad at Siddiqa for feeling this way about the show, but you also got to understand, my job is to sit here in front of the mic, in front of the camera, and just give you objective thoughts on the Cowboys. And this is where it's at. My job is not to be a cheerleader for the team, nor a fan. And I am a fan, and I like the Cowboys and everything, but that's not my job. I'm sorry about it. I understand where Sidika comes from, though. Fully understand it. And hey, it's part of being a fan. It's part of the fun, right? I promise one of these days I will do a show that I've already teased here before on reasons to be excited for the Cowboys. But it's also only fair to talk about the Cowboys subjectively on the show and just point out that objectively, the three positions that we've talked about so far, edge rusher, they're taking a step back. Defensive tackle, they're absolutely taking a step back. Linebacker might be more of a sideways move. I'm not going to lie. One of the most sideways moves. But then we get to cornerback, and we'll talk about that in a minute here. Shout out to TZ915 who says, Mo is the most optimistic Cowboys fan on YouTube. What the hell? There you go, TZ. Hopefully not to a biased point, though. But I consider myself a happy guy. So that might be more it. Dro says, this is a rebuild. They're just not telling us. It might be a rebuild, Dro. You might be onto something. My only thing about it being a rebuild is could have gone about it a better way if it is rebuild. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I've said this for a good while, man. I think it's somewhere in that gray area. Not really rebuild, but definitely not an all-in. Philip says it's not you. The Cowboys are a huge disappointment. It's been a bad offseason. I'll just say that, man. It's been bad. That's just the reality of things, though. Moving on to cornerback, though, now. Cornerback, man, sure, I wish Stephon Gilmore was re-signed by the Cowboys. Doesn't seem like that is going to happen. But you've got Trevon Diggs, Daron Bland, and Jordan Lewis as your starting three. I'm fine with that. Do I want better depth? For sure. Am I really concerned about the cornerback position? Not beyond just wondering about Trevon Diggs' health. But it also kind of eases my mind to know that he didn't get hurt in November. He didn't get hurt in December or January. So speaking of optimism, that is one area where I'm really, really optimistic. I'm not sweating the Trevon Diggs injury rehab. Just because it was so early in the season, I really expect Trevon Diggs to come back strong. I also understand there's some room for me being wrong about that. But this is a good set of cornerbacks. I like Jordan Lewis more than consensus. I think that he's been great as a nickel cornerback. Again, ideally, you would have re-signed Stephon Gilmore and Lewis would have been your number 4 cornerback. And I think that would have been absolutely ideal going into 2024. But at least I like the starting lineup. Now, Eric Scott Jr. is a huge wild card in this conversation because the Cowboys clearly saw something that they like on him. And Al Harris remains the defensive back coach. So that is the guy that, hey, can still make that connection from the Dan Quinn mentality when they drafted Eric Scott Jr. to the Mike Zimmer era. So I'm excited about Scott Jr. 6th-round draft pick, was a healthy scratch all season long. But it's a little bit different when you're asking him to be maybe the number 5, number 4 cornerback than with Biliami Fehoko at edge rusher in a position that is so rotational. I think cornerback is a little bit less so. That's why Gilmore and Bland were the 2 players with the highest snap counts for the Cowboys in 2023. So with this, I'm pretty comfortable. I'm pretty comfortable with the cornerback room. Nashon Wright, Josh Butler, maybe they deal some damage. Wright, obviously, one of the top depth guys on the Cowboys. I'm fine with cornerback, and I'm also fine with safety. I know Jaron Kears was lost, not sweating that too much. Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, and I'm adding Marquise Bell back to the safety room, in my opinion. And I've got Mukwamu, and I've got Juan J. Thomas. I'm wondering who is the number 4 safety in this room, but in a positive way. because I like the three of them. I like Mukwamu, Thomas, and Bell. And I'll say Sheldrick Redwine for safety 6. It's not bad. So I like Sheldrick Redwine. I like all of the safety room. With that, man, I'm okay. Defensive backs are not something I'm sweating. You can never have enough cornerbacks, so there's that. Hopefully, the Cowboys are able to find some hidden gems in the NFL draft, and I would view that as a day 3 kind of priority for the Cowboys. We'll see if they feel the same way, but that's where I'm at. Front 7, a lot of concerns in my opinion. Defensive backfield, not so much. But where I think the Cowboys are doing Mike Zimmer wrong is where I'm looking at the front 7 concerns, and I'm like, you could have signed a better linebacker or multiple linebackers. You could have stuck with Jonathan Hankins. You could have paid maybe even down to Fowler Jr. if you weren't going to pay Armstrong the amount of money that he was paid by Washington. I think that would have been fair, but at least one of the two would have been ideal as well. I just think, man, pairing those decisions with the fact that first round pick is not going to be defensive, nor is it going to be the second round pick. I think Zimmer is on an uncomfortable spot there going into the NFL draft. We'll see what happens though. And shout out to Skywalker Steele, man, who when Zimmer was hired, Sky did a great job going through the last few defensive coordinators the Cowboys had hired, and he pointed out the treatment that they received from the front office, where they went on signing sprees on free agency. Small names, but they clearly gave their defensive coordinator something to work with. Not with Zimmer, who's on a 1-year deal. And maybe the Cowboys just straight up told him, yeah, man, if you want to have some fun, just coach our defense, and it'll be a 1-year thing. And then you'll be out of here. Not a great way of going about it, though. Cam says, what do I get if I push the like button? You get a huge thank you from me. A big one. Manuel says, got to love the sport before you could be a fan of the team, and I love our Cowboys, but don't agree with a lot of what they're doing. Then again, that could be why I'm just a fan and not in office, says Manuel. But man, I'm going to be honest with you, man. There's a lot of people who know ball who don't agree with what the Cowboys are doing. So you're onto something. You're absolutely onto something. Bob says it's a no-lose situation for the boys. If they do better than expected, they look like geniuses. If they do very bad, they have good draft picks next year for the rebuild. As long as they've got Dak and CD and Jake Ferguson, though, it's also not going to be a top 10 pick or anything like that. Like, the Cowboys are going to win ball games, though. In my opinion, the Cowboys should have been closer to an all-in than to a rebuild or anything like that, which is what maybe doesn't make sense. The only justification for a rebuild can be just wanting to fully reset for 2025, not even 2024. So we're talking about a rebuild being 2 years away or something like that. But even then, they could have made it work, in my opinion, in a different way. But hey, this is what the Cowboys wanted to do. This is where we are living in right now. And hey, grass is always greener on the other side, but it's going to be a long, long offseason, and we'll see how the NFL draft plays out. For now, though, that will be it for tonight's show. And as always, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. Hit the like button for me if you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central, same time, same place. Appreciate you. Hit the like button for me. See you mañana. Bye-bye.